So let's make sure we can write the equation for a line when given two coordinate pairs. So it says to write the equation for a line that passes through the points 1, 6 and 3, 2. We are going to use our slope-intercept form, or y equals mx plus b. So in order to write an equation in the y equals mx plus b form, we have to find the slope, that's the m, and we also have to find the y-intercept, that's the b. Let's start by finding the slope, and one way to find the slope when you have two coordinate pairs is to use the slope formula. The formula for slope looks like this: m equals, and then we actually have a ratio. And on top of the ratio, we put the change in y. Sometimes we call that the rise. And the way we calculate it is to look at the difference, y2 minus y1. On the bottom of our ratio, we put the change in x. We also call that the run. And to calculate that, we'll look at the difference, x2 minus x1. And in the slope formula, the x1 and y1 correspond with the x and y coordinates of the first point. And the first point here is the point 1, 6. So I'm going to label those coordinates as our x1 and y1. And then our second coordinate pair I'm going to label as x2, y2. So now we can fill in the slope formula using those values. M equals, I'll draw my fraction bar. We are going to do the y2 minus the y1, and that's 2 minus 6. And then on the bottom of our fraction bar, the x2 minus the x1, and that's 3 minus 1. So now we just need to do some subtraction and division to find the slope. So 2 minus 6 is negative 4. 3 minus 1 is positive 2. And now we just have to divide. We have negative 4 divided by 2. And that division works out nicely. We get an answer of negative 2. If the division hadn't worked out so cleanly, you could get a decimal answer, or you might leave your answer just as a simplified fraction. So now that we have the slope, we can go ahead and rewrite our y equals mx plus b form and put the slope, negative 2, in the slope spot. And that's going to replace the m in the equation. So now we can write y equals negative 2x plus b. Now we're not done writing the equation because we haven't found the y-intercept, but we have found the slope, so it's kind of like we're halfway there. So remember that the y-intercept is the y value when x is 0. And if you look at our coordinate pairs that we were given, neither of these coordinate pairs have an x value of 0. So that tells us that the number 6 is not our y-intercept, and also that the number 2 is not our y-intercept. So we'll have to find the y-intercept a different way, and one way to find the y-intercept is to take this equation that we have with the slope filled in, and also fill in or substitute in an x and y pair that we know is a point on the line, and that will just leave us with b as our unknown, or as our kind of blank we have to fill in. So we can try that out. I usually will just use the first coordinate pair in my list as the coordinate pair, as the xy pair that I fill into the equation, but you certainly could use the other coordinate pair. It doesn't actually matter. So I'm going to go ahead in my equation now, replace the y in the equation with the y coordinate of the point. So in this case it's 6. So I'm going to rewrite the y as 6, rewrite the equals, and rewrite the slope. Now in this equation, when we have a negative 2 next to an x, that means multiplication. So it's negative 2 times x. Since we're going to substitute in place of that x a number, we need some symbol to show the multiplication. So I'm going to use parentheses. And in the x spot, and now here we see it as those empty parentheses, I'm going to substitute in the x coordinate of the coordinate pair 1, 6. So I'll substitute in a 1, And then I have to rewrite the rest of the equation plus b. So now this just becomes a simple equation to solve in order to find the value for b. Before I start solving this equation for b, I'm going to make it a little simpler by doing this multiplication. So I'm going to rewrite 6 equals negative 2 times 1 is just negative 2. And then I'll rewrite the plus b. Now all that remains is just to get the b by itself. And we can see that all that's being done to the b here on this side is that there is a negative 2 being added on. And remember, adding on a negative, that's like subtraction. So really this is subtraction we have to undo, and we undo subtraction using addition. So I'm going to add 2 on each side. I'll have to rewrite up over here. So we can see here that 6 plus 2 is 8. So I'll rewrite an 8 over here on the left side. And negative 2 plus 2, well, that's 0. So all that's left over here on the right side is just positive b, just b. So now we know that b equals 8. And remember, b is the y-intercept in our equation. So now we can look back here at kind of where we left off when all we knew was the slope. And now we also know the b value, or the y-intercept. So we're going to kind of merge together these two pieces of information. And now we can write our final equation. Y equals negative 2x plus 8. So notice that here our final equation is in that y equals mx plus b form. We have written y equals, and then we've written our slope of negative 2, and then next to it is our x, and then added on at the end, we've filled in our y-intercept. So the final equation starts with y equals, has a number in front of the x, and has a number added at the end.